Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.
Hi, I'm Barb Gravel.
And I'm Bob Dambach.
Welcome to Prairie Mosaic, a patchwork of stories about the people and places that contribute to the arts, culture, and history in our region.
On this edition, we'll meet an artist who is trained in Japan, hear poetry from a state competition winner, and enjoy some Native American music. Chainsaw sculpture was a natural progression for Joe Van Cleve. Growing up in rural Minnesota, he always appreciated nature and looking for creative outlets. So when Joe's dad started experimenting with chainsaw carving, he decided to give it a try too. Today his work is constantly evolving as he strives to improve with every new challenge.
I love making a log come to life. I think that's really neat to see regular piece of wood go from nothing to something unique. That's something that I really enjoy about the chainsaw carving. If at all possible, find a piece of wood that is big enough for the character I want to carve. I prefer to have the wood seasoned or sit for a year or two to get the moisture out of it. Otherwise, they do crack and split a lot. Pine is one of my favorite woods to work with. It's very easy to carve and it dries out a little bit faster. So what I like to do is I like to make a smooth cut on the bottom and stand it upright. And I just look at it to see which direction is going to be the easiest to work with. I guess I've always enjoyed art. I've done a lot of painting, I've done a lot of drawing, but something about the 3D, trying to make something look realistic with my own hands it's been something I've been thrilled with since I was a kid. Then what I like to do from there is I've got certain patterns that I cut with certain animals that I make. I make a few cuts just to get the rough outlines done, and that eliminates probably 75% of my cuts. And then from there I can do a lot more detail work. There's lots of little tricks that I've learned along the way. Back cutting and forward cutting, what's gonna dull the teeth on your chainsaw faster, not hitting the ground at all, because that'll really wreak havoc on your chainsaw. Once I'm satisfied with where I'm at with the chainsaw, what I like to do is, just to get the splinters off and the rough edges off, I like to take an angle grinder with sanding pad on it. And I like to go over that and smooth out any of the rough edges I don't like. And then I color it from there depending on what I think it needs. If I want to char it with fire or if I want to paint it with spray paint. It was all trial and error. And there's plenty of pieces I don't have in my yard that have become firewood. There's a lot of little detail. That's why I say practice as much as you can, because there's so many different things that you can do. I really enjoy trying to find that one thing I want to carve that nobody's carved yet. There's a lot of things I have yet to learn, but maybe one day I'll be good enough to help somebody else out.
Minot resident Stephen Glasser was the winner of the 2012 North Dakota Poetry Out Loud event. Stephen tells us about the event and recites a poem from his winning performance.
The Poetry Out Loud contest is a nationally syndicated contest that happens all across the country. It's broken down into various levels, from the classroom level through the school, state, and then national. The Poetry Out Loud contest is sponsored by the Poetry Foundation, the North Dakota Council of the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. I became involved in Poetry Out Loud through an assignment in my English class. As most other assignments, it wasn't the most popular thing, but after picking my poem alone and reciting it to the class, I found that I had won at the classroom level. So I moved on to the school level and went to state. And surprisingly, with some pretty tough competition, I was lucky enough to win at the state level as well and went to Washington, D.C. in May. From childhood's hour, I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source, I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. The school finals actually were the most nerve-wracking of all of the competitions, just because it was all of my peers from all the English classes, so about like 250 to 300 people. At the state level, however, there were only 13 competitors, and nationals, I felt prepared enough that I needed to be confident, so it wasn't as nerve-wracking as I thought it was going to be. You choose from a selected anthology of works that the Poetry Foundation has selected for a particular year. They have to be X amount of lines from a certain time period. So you don't write the poems, but you recite them in a way that demonstrates that you understand what they mean and that you can convey that message fluently to the listeners. You have to recite 3 at the national and state level, but just 1 to get started. There are no stars tonight, but those of memory. Yet, how much room for memory there is in the loose girdle of soft rain. Poetry is nothing to be sneered at or scoffed at. Many people think it's a pretty woolly discipline or subject, but poetry is much like music or much like anything that makes somebody feel a certain way. At any particular time, there's a poem out there that will suit your mood, and knowing them just means that you can draw from that at moment of need and seek solace or comfort in it. The second poem that I chose is The Bloody Sire by Robinson Jeffers. That I chose because it's just kind of another weightier topic, and much like Alone, I felt that it would go well, and it kind of parodies the violence in the world and how silly it is that humankind is as confrontational as we are. The Bloody Sire by Robinson Jeffers. It is not bad. Let them play. Let the guns bark and the bombing planes speak his prodigious blasphemies. It is not bad. It is high time. Stark violence is still the sire of all the world's values. What but the wolf's tooth whittled so fine the fleet limbs of the antelope? What but fear winged the birds, and hunger jeweled with such eyes the great Goshawk's head? Violence has been the sire of all the world's values. Who would remember Helen's face, lacking the terrible halo of spears? Who formed Christ but Herod and Caesar? The cruel and bloody victories of Caesar. Violence, the bloody sire of all the world's values. Never weep. Let them play. Old violence is not too old to beget new values.
Conductor David Aitken's career has taken him to 44 U.S. states and 15 countries in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. He collaborates with artists such as Itzhak Perlman and Yo-Yo Ma. Recently, Aitken brought his talents to the FM area as a finalist in the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony Orchestra Conductor's Search.
the power of great music is not what you know or what you think you should be educated in before you come into the concert hall. There is an intrinsic and fundamental power and change, spiritually changing force that is in great music, and you don't have to know anything to have it happen to you, and that's what happened to me, and it's what happens to people in concert halls every day. So my whole life and my whole focus of what it was I wanted to do in music was changed simply by going. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. My interest in the music that my life is involved in now really came in my teens through my grandmother. My grandmother started taking me to the symphony when I was 16. I think this is a great community with so many young people that want to be involved and seem to be really getting excited and motivated. Every time you hit 2 eighth notes, you're going to focus like a laser beam on the 2 eighth notes that they're not going to lean forward. Okay? Let's see if we can do that. Here we go. And 1. We talked about the intersection between Handel, which is the piece they were playing, and rock and roll. Better. Oh yeah, better. Oh my goodness. Much better. Here we go. That might be a thought that they have not had, but it's a very important thought. The connectivity between Baroque music and rock and roll is actually quite close. Good, good, good. Good, good, good. I think it's very important to make that contact, and especially that contact which is purely musical. We do this program in Abilene for some concerts where there's a section of the audience where you bring your smartphone or your iPad and you're fed what is essentially a PowerPoint presentation all during the concert, exactly timed to the music. There's a different bit of information or visual image or something that directly pertains to the music you're hearing, keeps a generation of people who are device and visually addicted a bit more engaged. This organization and this orchestra are better known than the people in this community might be aware. This orchestra has a long and very successful history, both artistically and as an organization, having lasted a long time, having been solvent for a long time. The conductors that have been here, these are people of ability and substance, and they came and stayed and, obviously wanted to be there. That says a lot. A great part of making music and of many of my career decisions have to do with the people that I want to make music with. Working with soloists and working on the repertoire that they play is very different than the pure symphonic work experience. This is Ingbal Segev. We are old friends. We met 90 minutes ago. Okay. A lot of the decisions that I make about soloists that I work with have to do with relationships that are built up over long periods of time. Here we go. And a certain both personal and musical familiarity that comes with being able to get together on stage with a soloist that you've worked with many times, and music just starts to happen and flow because you get each other's musical ideas. To me, it's part of the glory of my job, is getting to have that experience as well as the pure symphonic experience. I think there's tons and tons of upward artistic potential here. I really do. You are 100% in charge of this concert. You are 100% in charge of the quality of this concert. There is no reason for anybody being paid to play to show up to the first rehearsal for anything less than able to play every single note in that part perfectly. Because once we do that, we can actually we actually have time to deal with the things that we should be dealing with in rehearsal that I can do with and for you. Can we stop for 1 second? The color change was nice. You got to be ready because I get no warning. I get an eighth note to prep and it's going to go bonk and we're going to be there, okay? Our job, 98% of our job is done in rehearsal. And if we didn't do it properly, there is no performance. There's no saving a performance. that wasn't properly rehearsed. And learning how to rehearse effectively, thoroughly, in an organized way, in an inspiring way, is exactly what our job is. And that last bit at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night is the tip of the iceberg that you get to see.
The Fargo-Moorhead Symphony is searching for its next music director. This season, our Masterworks concerts will each be led by one of the 5 finalists. The decision of who will be the next artistic leader will involve valuable input from the orchestra musicians, audience members, symphony supporters, students, and members of the community, including you. The countdown begins. Who will be the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony's next conductor?
After spending nearly 4 years in Japan as an apprentice for the Nagasato family, Richard Bresnahan returned to St. John's University with a wealth of pottery knowledge and skills. He set up a completely indigenous pottery studio, including the largest wood-firing kiln of its kind in North America. We visited with Richard about his pottery and philosophies.
When you're becoming an artist, especially working in a clay material, you're having what we call shiaji. Shi means clay, aji means taste. You're learning the taste of the clay. And so that's a metaphor for you're taking in your exterior environment into your interior environment. You're developing a spirituality to your material. I went to high school here at St. John's Prep School in 1968, and then in 1972 started here at the university. My art history teacher, Sister Johanna Becker, was working on major research in Japan, especially the ancient Karatsu ceramics, and then I left for an apprenticeship in Japan in 1975. My first 3 months in Japan, I didn't even get on the potter's wheel. The first 3 months were then learning how to wash ashes to make glazes. That kind of step-by-step process of learning provided me with the foundation so that after 3.5 years of throwing and kiln building, here was a methodology that was taught to an individual saying, oh, I can do this. I have been given the skill sets that I can humanely do this myself. Or I can teach this to young people that this is a very efficient but also a humane way of working. Thank you. When I returned back from Japan in 1979, Father Michael asked me, what can St. John's do for you? I described the idea of setting up a clay program that had not been done in any universities in the United States, where that we'd only work from in indigenous systems, working only with natural materials found in the area, and we would develop a clay program working with local materials and wood firing. And at that time in 1979, there were only around 8 operating wood kilns in North America. I was guessing that there might be materials here. Francis Schillinger, who was taking his children out on a 4-H project to find crystals, found the clay deposit in a road cut bed in Collegeville Township. So I go up to Father Michael Blecker in the president's office and I say, Father Michael, I found a clay deposit and they're going to be digging the clay deposit out in the next season, but it's the most beautiful clay, and I want to dig enough clay for St. John's for 300 years of clay making. And he turns in his chair and he looks at me and says, Richard, in 1,500 years of Benedictine history, 300 years is not all that long. I trust what you're doing. I'm very interested in functionalism, because one of the things, if you know that you're making something from a material that's 144 million years old, it's a little laser light of time. From 144 million years, you've changed the material and you fired it, and it's forever changed. That's a great responsibility. You're taking something and you're changing it forever. You know, we name our children after people who have saved your life, or you've admired them, or they're very important in your life. Well, Sister Johanna saved my life as a teacher, and she became an important mentor and a colleague, and I was her student. It takes about 12,000 pieces to fire the kiln. Big pieces, small pieces. It takes a year and a half of making pieces. These are all getting ready for the 12th firing. It takes 7 weeks of loading, 10 days of firing, a week of cooling, a week of unloading, 9 months of cleaning. It doesn't fit an academic system. You can't all of a sudden make something and get a grade. It doesn't fit a commercial market at all. So why is this system so important? It's the best ecological and energy model, and it's the best community building model for culture. Because it takes 45 people to fire this kiln and 5 cooks who are cooking meals. My wife Colette organizes all the chefs so that sometimes we have 300 people for dinner here during the firing, because they're coming to see this and they want to be here to help. I am certain that the clay we wash, the materials we get, are the purest, so that I can rest easy at night that what I make for human beings is not only safe, but it can last 100 years and you can hand it down generationally. That means something.
Music has always been a part of Annie Humphrey's life. After joining the U.S. Marines and then returning to Minnesota, she decided to live close to nature. Her original music and lyrics are stories that reflect her life experiences and her culture.
Sister, I carried my life. I carried my life in my hands today. I carried it to the office of a social worker. I didn't know it would be a man. A man who really didn't care, who wouldn't help, who sent me home to hard time. Carried my life, sister, I carried my life, carried my life. How many more beatings can you take, woman? And how much more will you endure? I just sat there and I didn't know what to say, 'cause I didn't know the answer myself that day. Carried my life, sister, I carried my life, carried my life. Carried my life, sister, I carried my life, carried my life. I didn't know I was facing
If you know of an artist, a topic, or an organization in our region that you think might make for an interesting segment, please contact us at prairiemosaic@prairiepublic.org. I'm Bob Dambach.
And I'm Barb Gravel. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Prairie Mosaic.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. The North Dakota Humanities Council, a nonprofit, independent state partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.